first year. Really liked his speech, and Marko is coming from Croatia. He's their creative director in an agency. He does also some writing, and we are really glad also to have him here talking about typography with us. Thank you. Stage is yours.
No? Yes? Okay. I mean, I pushed the button a minute ago, so that's very weird. Well, thank you for coming. I mean, I guess the other talk was... I have no other explanation because we are going to talk about typography, and it's basically a topic that you heard from the first grade in your school, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and everything. So now is the time to revise some of that and, you know, to go into real small details, especially considering responsive web design and how typography can improve it. Anyway, I'm Marko Duganic on Twitter. I usually reply back if you have a problem, I mean a typographic problem. If you read my bio, you know that I built Type Tester. It's currently developed, we are currently developing the version number 2, which will have user profiles, and it will be much more convenient for testing and trying responsive typography. I also run an agency, Creative Nights. This is because most of the time, like many of you, work at night. I work at night to deliver, you know, the final prototypes. And during the day, I do all this different kind of stuff that we all hate to do, like administration, emails, and everything. I also organize a conference in Zagreb in Croatia. We had second year this year. It's only a 10 hours drive by car, but it's about 1 hour and a half by plane. So if you want to, you know, connect the conference and summer vacation, you should really join us. I'm also writing for a couple of months now a chapter for the smashing book number 4, obviously on typography. So this is just a small portion of what will be covered, at least in my chapter. From what I know from other authors, I think the book will very well connect all these different disciplines into one cohesive theory of modern web design. Anyway, I have a life too. This is my gang. I mean, this is what we've been able to produce by far. So we're still negotiating if this is the final number, but as you can see, our eldest he just loves playing online games. You know, this is the current game, something. I mean, look at this Fist of Victory. His name is Luka. This is one exercise from the typography workshop that we ran at the local elementary. It was visited by 30 students, like 1 to 4th grade. So it was really amazing. And I'm really obsessed with this. I mean, not the sex shops, but the display typography and signage, and, you know, how different people, different countries spell these common words like sex. You know, why do they have to use this Z? You know, if everybody understands without it. Like all other people that have the same illness like I do, which some people call an eye for typography, I too go berserk when I see an arrangement like this. And I mean, I can stand the Comic Sans, obviously. Okay, I can understand that. It has to be fun trip, you know, and everybody should have fun. So let's make it Comic Sans that, you know, that brings up emotions, you know, from high school, from primary school, whatever. I can understand that they have like a couple of typefaces there. But what I really cannot understand, what's the purpose of this? I mean, is it the kind of, you dial a number, but think twice before you call us, you know? They are like they deliberately made a barrier for you to call them, you know? Anyway, I have a couple of scary variables for you, like Vitaly actually announced. I have a few CSS tips and tricks, but I think the most valuable part of this talk are the parts of my process, how I approach typography and how I solve different issues with responsive web design. So let me ask you something. Have you ever saved an article on your desktop computer and send it to your mobile phone expecting that you will read it on the bench in a park when you have time and everything is quiet? Please raise your hand. Okay. Exhibit A. Great content, web typography, web fonts, generous line height, appropriate line length, about 60 characters, everything's perfect. Oops. And on mobile, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look as you'd expect, to read it on a bench in a park in quiet, enjoying the content. And I'm not talking about style only, about poorly executed typefaces, but for instance, look at this. What's this? This is communication on tool. So these kinds of details are very important when you typeset. It doesn't matter the style if the substance is not done right. On the right, you have only the first line is visible, and basically you have to instantly scroll if you want to read anything in that article. Exhibit B, beautiful content, free, beautiful occasion, really, really good article. Appropriate illustration, well-set typography for lean back reading on desktop computer, but on mobile. So this is the first screen, and you still don't know where you are. So the first rule of interface design is let the user know where they are, right? So how do you do that on a blog post? By acknowledging the title of the article up front. Okay. So you actually have to scroll down twice the full fold to get the title, which is not adjusted for mobile, and then you have scroll a little more to start actually reading the content. So why is that? Why are such otherwise beautifully executed typographic designs so poorly executed on mobile? And the answer is quite clear. They were developed on desktop computer with the desktop reading distance, with desktop down instead of mobile up approach. So it's very clear that the core tools for responsive web design, media queries, flexible images, and flexible layouts are obviously not sufficient for cross-platform typographic experience. So let's see what other variables we have. So apart from viewport width and height, which we can easily test with media queries, we have reading distance, we have content hierarchy, we have information density, we have pixel density, we have aspect ratio, and we have different orientations on any handheld device. So to quote Tim Brown, who says in his talk Universal Typography, in print, you think about conditions, you pick a point, and you set your type, and it doesn't change. Can you see the point? It's over there. It doesn't change. You print it out and it's there. It doesn't move. Web typography is about picking more than one point. In fact, what we do is determine limits and define a range of acceptable solutions. Okay? So our type can be anywhere here. These are our limits. These are our boundaries inside typography should work on the web. Tim's talk is available on Vimeo, so go ahead and watch it later. So what do we have? We have these extremes. So we have close reading, distant reading, high DPI screen, core screen, everything that you can understand already. So how do we approach solving this number of extremely complex axes along which our typography should sit? let's investigate one by one. I have 7 points, so you can count down. Reading distance. Reading distance determines the letter size. So if the medium is closer, letter size can be smaller. If it's farther away, it should be larger. That's no-brainer. And the problem is that we have this CSS reference pixel, which is a web standard that promises that anything that's at arm's length, which is 71 centimeters, should be, any pixel should be 0.26 millimeter in diameter. But as you know, we cannot know if that device was meant to be held at 71 centimeters or it's there, incidentally. So we are all the time we are basically second guessing what's the reading distance based on the dimensions. So we have a guess, okay, anything below 1024 to 600-ish is a tablet, and it should be held like this. Maybe I want to, watch it above me while I'm falling asleep, or maybe, near my pillow, or maybe I want to put it on my counter while I'm cooking. So you have all these different reading distances, which are pretty probable. It's not something that I imagine that's not possible. So I see a problem here. The one thing we can do is experiment like I did. I can show it to you later. So what I did is I used web camera to track the user's face, and I can then readjust the font size. How do you do that? You only need an information about the distance of the reader from the screen, and then you can simply add another set of variables along with at media width and height to determine the 3D space, to describe it. And these are your boundaries. Okay, if you don't have such sensors, we still have to believe browser vendors and OS vendors that the default 16 pixels is the perfect font size for that reading distance for that particular device. So what do? As you know, we used to use 62.5%, so we reset 16 pixels to 10 pixels, so we can much more easy make multiples of that 10 pixels, which is very convenient to calculate. But nowadays, if you want to use M-based media queries, which will I explain later, you have a problem because at media queries, so one M in at media query is always referenced to 16 pixels and not what you set to your body or HTML element. Okay. While we are here, maybe as a default, we can set the max width for the paragraph. How to calculate max width. So your ideal line length is, say, 60 characters. You divide that by 2 because half an M is, on average, 1 character per line. So if you want to preserve 60 characters, you specify 30 M's. Okay, that's the rule. And in this way, if you have extremely wide screen, it won't be like 100% wide line, which is very awful to read. Anyway, if you don't trust browser vendors, and I don't trust them, I really want to test my typography every time with a well-set book. Simply use something that you trust as a reference point, like a website, a book, or anything, and just test it and see how it works for you. Don't believe the rules like 16 pixels or 12 pixels. Another very important variable is viewport width. This quote was retweeted and quoted over and over from the Robert Brinker's book. And everybody knows that the perfect line is like 66 characters. But the problems that we face right now is that on a small screen, you can barely fit 40 characters. So what do? We have to understand how the line length influence the line spacing. Okay, if breakpoints should not be dictated by devices but by content, how do we manage to have appropriate typography on small screen, which is already too small, much smaller than the ideal line length, or how do we manage paragraphs that are longer than our ideal line length? Well, Trent Walton actually came with a very simple trick. He adds an asterisk after 45th and 75th character, so you can actually observe what happens with the line, and you can introduce new breakpoint whenever it touches the asterisk. So you can have really smooth transition from, say, one column, so you stretch it and it touches another asterisk, and then you introduce another column or just fix it and increase margins. It's very easy to test with this. So I think maybe this is the most important tip for really not going insane with flexible layouts. Just put asterisk after 45th and 75th character and see how lines reflow. Okay, so M-based media queries are very useful if you want to allow your users to zoom in into your responsive website. So for instance, if somebody is browsing the web with 120% increased font size, they will have the broken main navigation. You also saw that by now. So if we use M-based media queries for users who zoom in, they will get mobile navigation, but the website will work for them. It will not like destroy the whole header and text and everything. You can learn more at the link that's provided here. Anyway, now that we have free breakpoints, let's see what happens with the paragraph. You all probably know that the longer the line, the more space we have to have between the lines, right? So, in this case, we need more space. In this case, we need a little less space. So, it's not the general rule that we can increase line height as much as we can, because in this case, when you have really narrow column, this increased line height creates a list. So a good test is to observe your mobile text from the distance or just squinting your eyes, and then if you see a list instead of a paragraph, that's too much line height. You can simply decrease it. And how tight is too tight? So obviously this doesn't work, but how do you test it? Just simply type million of Q's and B's or whatever attaches and see if that works. So you need a space here. Additionally, if you are typesetting for international audience, you'd want to untouch the diacritic uppercase. The diacritic sh is available in most typefaces, so make sure these don't touch. A little code. So under 45 characters, a rule of thumb, line height 1.4, 45 to 60 characters, 1.45 or 1.5. So as you can understand now, this is what we used to have, and now we have to have different line heights for smaller breakpoints. I actually added margin bottom to create a block paragraph. So when you have an empty line after a paragraph, it's called block paragraph, and the opposite is, or more condensed version, is called indented paragraph, which is very useful nowadays again because or it wasn't very useful for multi-column layouts because it would ruin the strictness of the grid, okay, with the indents. But now that you have text on smaller screens, which don't have like sidebars and anything, you can use them so you can have more lines on the small screens. Okay, you don't need to break everything with clear lines. Anyway, how do we preserve vertical rhythm? My favorite topic. Everybody hates it because it's very hard to maintain. Okay, so we used to create a, say, 24 pixels high GIF or PNG in Photoshop, and we'd place it as a repeating background in CSS, right? To create the baseline grid. And it's very hard now when you have to have like 3 or 4 different line height by line length, rules. But now we have this awesome property, background size. So we can create a linear gradient, which basically behaves as a couple of white pixels with 1 full pixel, and we can change its size, and it's basically dynamic baseline grid. So how do we do that? We can use ems, of course. So when you have a line height of 1.4 ems, you just use the same background size height for your background gradient. And this is very fast for, especially if you have to explain to your clients why why it's important. This is very, very visual way to show them that you need order in your layouts. Okay, so use this baseline grid only if you can maintain it, of course, and show it to your clients. It's very, very attractive to them because then they think that they know more. All of this like reasoning behind it. Anyway, if 3 or 4 breakpoints is not enough control for you, Tim Brown again proposed mean and max line height rules in CSS, which is obviously not standard still. But this cool guy, Matt Marquis, or Marquis, I don't know, created a jQuery plugin in which you can determine the ranges within you want your line height to be flexible. So it's very cool. Try it sometimes. Anyway, line height is pretty obvious to anybody who does web design. You know how to set line height and you have a good eye for that. But the very, very important thing that little people in web design know is that the letter space and the word space and the line space are interdependent. So if you change one, you should actually change all 3. So if you increase line height, you should increase letter spacing and word spacing. How do we do that? So if you get wrong this space, it doesn't matter so much. So you have a margin of error that's not recognizable by untrained eye. If you screw this, it will be, maybe ignored. But if you don't make this right, it will be pretty obvious. I will show it to you. All this knowledge is from this very, very nice book, which can be read in 1 hour. So bookmark it. Okay. Can you see the difference between the left setup and the right one? What's the difference? Which space? Word space. Letter space. So if you change the letter space, it will influence your word space too. You cannot leave in CSS. You cannot leave your word space out of letter space. Letter space will influence word space, and you can, of course, additionally tweak your word space. Anyway, many graphic designers told me that type on the web, this is the default, is too tight compared to a book or a magazine. So basically, this is something that should be much better to read. Since we have 96 DPIs mostly on PCs, and Firefox and IE 8 and up can render these tiny increments, but the screen is too coarse and you get blocky O's and B's that are not rounded anymore. It's better avoided on such crude screens. So use this mean device pixel ratio 1.5 to provide it for Mac computers or iPads or Androids or whichever smartphone that has this pixel density to render correct shapes. So the minimum increment that you can get is 0.01 m, and it will work. So the test to see if the spacing is correct is very simple. Just ask somebody to read your text out loud and listen to the rhythm. You don't have to listen to the content. Just listen to the rhythm. And if you see that they are like that they are having struggles or the pace is uneven, that's a sure sign that something's wrong with the spacing. Okay, hierarchy. So why do we need hierarchy in typography? Who knows? It's a very simple answer, actually. To guide the user. Bravo, you get the book. I have 4 books. You pick. You're the first one to pick. Okay, so yeah, subtitles, subheads are guidelines. It's kind of like mark how many kilometers you have to the Croatian coast when you visit my conference and go to summer vacation. So you have this big sign like Zagreb is like 1,000 kilometers from here, then you get like only 900 and then 800 and 500 and you're almost there. So that's why you need figure captions, that's why you need subheads, that's why you need side notes, to remove all unnecessary things away so you get the core content right in the middle, center, and create and break the text with these subheads that help people, like, okay, I will a little bit more, I'll get it. But anyway, if the most of the articles on your website are like 3 paragraphs with a headline, it doesn't make sense to create too big typography and to set it too big letter side in the headline. But if you have multiple subheads, obviously you need to create a kind of a system. So we can use typographic scale. This one is rather generic, but it will help the purpose. So for mobile devices, we can use a range from 16 to 24. For iPads or tablets, we can use 18 to 36. And for desktop computers, we can use the top range from 21 to 48. Why? Because you will preserve the cross-platform reading experience. So on each platform, users will have the same gradation of subheads. Okay. This is the example CSS for free breakpoints. Once you're comfortable with this generic scale, you can design your own. This one is based on 1.5 increments, so each number is 150% than the previous one. And you can also use modular scale, which is an online calculator, which will give you pretty decent results based on some musical scales, which is very convenient because you can build up on theory from the past, from people who spent like their whole lives to investigate proper scales. Another option is to style subheads differently, especially on mobile screen when you don't want to use extremely large type because you don't have much space. So you can use all caps, small caps, and italics to create the hierarchy. The result is something like this, and it's very obvious what the most important element here and the least important element on small screen. Well, you probably know how to set all caps. How do you set all caps? What uppercase what? Okay, and you know how to set italics, but you probably don't know how to set small caps. The best bet is to simply have a dedicated font with small caps characters, and you just use it as it is. Another option is to use open type feature if the main font has small caps actually embedded in. You have to double check that, of course. The third and the hackiest option is to actually decrease uppercase. To decrease uppercase and use a slightly bolder weight to compensate for the fragile shapes. Is this paper? Anyway, don't kill me. I wrote an article for Typekit with all these options, and this is a very cool demo where you have all these versions of subheads and combinations and what you can do with these additional graphic elements. Number 4, information density. So it's obvious that on small screen you only can have one column, and on desktop screen you have 3 columns like navigation, main content, and sidebar. And to make things even worse, usually there's a space for banners, okay, and all kinds of advertising. So if you have banners which are graphically very intensive and also moving, you have to create a kind of balance with the rest, with your typography. So on small screen, you don't need to use graphic elements like lines, like different colors for the background of your column, or texture, or gradients, or anything, because nothing competes with your main text. But on desktop, on a desktop computer, on desktop monitor, you actually have to have something that's really, trying to bring balance into this whole composition. So this is a very handy cheat sheet. Use style variations for headers, for subheads with less information layouts, with more information layouts, typographic scale, so variations in size. Use indented paragraphs without white space after the paragraph. On small screens, on large screens, use block paragraphs because they bring more structure. Use white space on mobile screen, and use lines, texture, color, everything you need on larger screen. To prove that lines and background color is not the brainchild of web designers, I'm presenting this the screenshot of the newspapers, and also I really like the titles here. This is actually type specimen from Type Together, these two guys. Pixel density, how do we fight that? We have 2 issues. We have different screen resolutions, and we have this rigid grid of pixels. The first case, or rigid pixels, are easily done if you use typefaces from a foundry that actually optimize their fonts for the screen, and not just offered their usual suspects for print, now available on web. If you need a benchmark service, please visit Font Bureau. They are really known for taking care about the tiniest details in hinting. Can you please guess these 3 devices? Yeah, different devices. Just increase so it matches all 16 pixels at Dell. Okay, so three different devices from the most closed manufacturer ever, Apple. Even they don't have consistent experience. Lucky for us, in print design, they had all these problems that we have, like different paper quality, different ink quality. So they invented different grades for each font weight. These are kind of sub weights. So for regular you have 3 or 4 grades. For bold you have 3 or 4 grades, and you can use each depending on your paper quality. Information architects from Zurich, they took the same approach to serve different graded fonts depending on the screen resolution. And if you see this same text on 3 different devices, it should appear the same. So that's your perception should be that the typeface is the same typeface, that the same font is used. But when you actually export or steal the font into your Photoshop file and analyze it, then you can see that they actually designed 3 grades for the same font. So these are basically 3 font files. this is how you use it. So by default you use the grade A, which is what? The tiniest or the thickest? So for default, by default you use for the worst screens. Which one do you use? The thickest one or the thinnest one? Okay. So the better the quality, the thickest the font you can use. Also, why do we have this orientation problem? What do you think? Based on what? iPad compared to iPhone, or iPad orientation compared to iPad portrait or orientation? What's the difference in orientation?
iPad portrait is different from iPad landscape.
In what?
In the thickness of the font, how it is displayed.
Why is that?
Everything.
Everybody knows that, but
All the pixel is constructed.
exactly. So in one orientation we have subpixels, okay, red, green, blue. In another orientation we don't have them. Okay. So whenever you change the device, you have to ask yourself what's the default setup for pixels. Okay. So that's why type actually looks different when you change the orientation of the device. It's mind-blowing, but this is how it works. So if you want to cover all these details, this is the way to do it. If you need if you want to play with grades, just go there. They have like tons of faces that are available in multiple grades. Device orientation. This is a little exercise for us. So if we leave the default zooming in, you get this result, which is not acceptable, of course. Say we adjust the font size. This doesn't work too. Let's increase it. So now it's broken here. Let's bring in fit text. This is too small. Another way around, so with the line break, this is too large. Okay, so what do? We readjust, so these two setups have different font sizes and you have to take care of the line break. But what else we can do? We can actually use different font widths. So you can have narrow font on one orientation and the width variant for different orientation. Why do we use that? So that we preserve reading experience across platform and we maintain the brand experience. How do we do line break on one and not on the other?
Yeah.
Can you think of something? It's very easy, actually. You always have a line break. But in some cases you can say it's display none. Display none. Yeah, you just say BR, display none. It's gone and it's gone. So this is how it looks another way around. And of course, it's very easy. You can readjust letter spacing for each orientation as easily. A list apart. They're using different widths for body copy. This is the difference. Can you guess the typeface? What? Georgia? Who said Georgia? Which one? This one or this one? This one is Georgia. And this one? It's Georgia. But it's Georgia Pro. So you can have actually Georgia Pro, which have like Cyrillic, Greek, diacritics, everything into widths, which is very convenient because people are used to Georgia and it renders pretty well on all the screens. Web fonts available in multiple widths, really plenty of them, so it's not something that's very exotic. It's very common to use multiple widths. The last one, screen aspect ratio. Another quiz for you. What's this? Come on. Golden ratio of what? These are paper sizes. And see how neatly they are, they're so proportional. If we had such, distributed screens, I think we'd see the light at the end of the tunnel. But no. I'm sorry, I have to disappoint you. I don't have a solution for this. You really have to just, decide on, some usual suspects and typeset for them. Okay, so what did we learn? We still don't have a reliable method of detecting viewing distances. We learned about line length and line height and letter spacing, how to manage hierarchy in two different ways, so typographic scale and different styles, about graded fonts for different screen resolutions. We learned how to use white space instead of graphic elements for different information densities. We learned that we can use different widths for different device orientations, and we learned that we can do nothing about our fragmentation of different resolutions. So, we have a situation like this. We started with 3 axes, right? Now we ended up with 7, 8, something like that. But that's not all, of course. So if you go outside of the relationship, so we investigate 7 axes that happens here, okay, in between me and my device, in my bed, on the toilet, or whenever. But we didn't investigate what happens outside, okay? And then you have the device, what's happening in there, OS, browser, everything. You have the environment. So not just is it a beautiful day, but noises, people pushing in the subway, whatever, time, what time of day, but also what season it is. Are you using your phone with the glove, okay? Or is it so hot that your sweat drips on the screen? Activity, what are you doing? Are you running? Are you working? Are you whatever, taking a dump? Individual, so what are my preferences? You cannot guess all the preferences for each respective user. That's so obvious. Location, where I am, is my location detected? Really detected wrong for me? I want to buy from, I don't know, Croatian App Store, but right now I'm in Zurich and my IP is like Swiss. So what's happening here? And of course social. Is it a single player game or something that we should do together, like Skype chat or whatever, group call? So the real situation is this, okay? And I think this is the perfect opportunity to congratulate you on your new job. Well done. New responsibilities, yeah. This responsive web design and typography and everything is so fragmented and hard. But you really sometimes need to just lie down. Take a deep breath. And just swim away. Thank you. On time. Somebody is on time.
Yeah, awesome. Like after being the second year you're here, like your Swiss clock precision is perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, we have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Okay, we have time for 3 questions because I still have 3 books.
Let's do that.
1 to 3 mobile. Mobile, okay. Questions? Oh, wow.
Yes.
No more for you.
Yeah.
Are there not many CSS frameworks that incorporate modules?
So are there not any CSS frameworks that no, and I encourage you not to use them because you will lose control.
If you showed examples where there's less text-heavy and rules are not as diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Like in those cases, then perhaps a CSS framework or something like that could take the heavy lifting away from managing some of the typography.
Well, yeah, but well, I really hate frameworks, I must admit. My usual answer is that what you saw today is like 10 slides of code. This is all you need. So you don't need the framework for this, obviously. You know, so if you're smart, it's very simple. You know, it's not that hard. You know. If you're smart in a way that you go online and search for my slides and copy and paste, I mean, why would you do anything other than that, you know? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So the purpose of this talk is to just show you that there are like 5 or 7 small units that you have to combine together and, you know, it will work. So I don't think you need a framework. Yes? Okay. Yeah, you can. Who was the first? I mean, I'll hide this. Okay, later.
How do you deal with the client doesn't have to contact yet? But
You don't accept such projects. No, honestly.
now, but in real life, that happens. Or there's a
Well,
blog and you
okay,
don't know what the fuck
okay.
the text
There is a way, of course. So if you really want to accept this project, then you go to see what competition content you can find. So you just ask them what's your competition, they say like this, and then you steal this content, and then they are very eager to, you know, write their own content. So, no, this is wrong. Okay, good question, by the way. Bingo. I don't have an answer to this. Everybody heard that? So, if you want to typeset for web, you should read Print Design book. So, the only thing that I do is translate print design rules to CSS language. That's the truth. The only difference is that you have only one point in print design, and we have to think in terms of ranges. Okay, so we have this hypercube of possibilities, and in print design you have like glossy paper and magazine layout, and everything is like set in stone, and you send it to a print shop and it's printed, and you know that's it. You don't have to worry if somebody cannot read it. Come on. And in web design, we have this fragmentation and different, you know, connection speeds and all these variables and you have to. That's why web typography is never so precise as print typography. You cannot expect to have, say, perfectly set up headline with you know broken lines in a particular way with, say, some adjectives that are in italic and some keywords bold, because it will be broken on web. So. Yeah, the basic typography is as from print. Anybody else?
What are your thoughts on flowtype.js? This is a tool available that takes into account the width of the element and calculates the optimal characters per line, and then adjusts the line height accordingly. It's a tool that just apparently hit GitHub 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was wondering if you were able to check it out.
No, I'm afraid not. But I think that's basically something like molten leading, right? Like the molten leading plugin that I showed you from Marquee. I mean, the principle for such plugins or tools is very similar. You calculate what's the number of characters, and you readjust the line height. So I mean, typography is very simple. If you can just, disassemble everything, and then you can see it's not that complicated. What is complicated is to find your limits and, simply take all the variables into account. That's the different part, not the techniques in itself. So
Perhaps a last one? If not,
yes. Okay, that's a really good question. So
can you repeat it for the?
how do you maintain vertical rhythm if you have flexible images or video, right, or whatever iframes? So one way is to create a container, flexible container with padding. So do you know how to do that? Flexible images. You have a div container which is 100% wide, and if your images are like 3:4 ratio, you'd use padding top 75%, and you'd absolutely position image within that container. So you can do the same to preserve the vertical rhythm, except you wouldn't specify height 100% for the image, just the width, and you can basically, your container is preserving the vertical rhythm. That's one way. Another way is to write a plugin that will, just calculate the height of the image and apply the bottom margin or whatever padding. The third way is to have all images standardized. And yeah, that's about it. Yeah, Baseline.js. That's my second option. You have, I think, 2 or 3 solutions for that already built. So. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marco. So again, short